Moving on to the Indiana Hoosiers, number 17 in the preseason polls. I mean, you look at their offense. Michael Penix Jr. returns, completed 56% of his passes for 1,645 yards, 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions in 2020. He was fourth in the Big Ten last season in passing yards. They do return their leading receiver, and Tide Freifogel returns as the leading receiver, 37 catches for 721 yards and 7 touchdowns. As far as their defense is concerned, not a lot to get excited about on defense. They were 10th in the Big Ten in yards per game allowed, 378. They do get Micah McFadden back. He had 44 tackles, 6 sacks, and an interception in 2020. Jalen Williams and Tywone Mullen lead the secondary, who they combined for 6 interceptions. So, I mean, this Notre Dame team is probably the best Notre Dame team that we can talk about over the last 2 years.
Indiana.
What did I say, Notre Dame?
Oh yeah.
We said Notre Dame so much that I had them on the brain.
Right into it.
Yep. Yeah. IU. They're one of the best IU teams we've seen in a long time. And so, but the only problem is that they play in the Big Ten, and they really have a Big 12 makeup where they can sling the ball all over the place, but the defense is suspect, and so is the run game.
Which is surprising for IU. Suspect running game. Well, I guess it kind of hurts when one of your top-tier running backs decides to transfer during training camp to your in-conference rival, Purdue.
Right. Their defense, like I said, is a huge question mark. Their biggest question mark is the running game, being able to take the pressure off Penix, because that's one of the things too. If you can't really run the football and all you do is pass, then they're going to basically dare you to run the football and take away what you do best, which is passing. So their ability to establish the run is going to be key in their success this season. But they are a program that's trending up. I mean, IU fans have a lot to be excited about this season, as we talked about in the Indiana ambassador rankings.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that's going to be fun to watch. And like I said earlier, it's all key on the health of Michael Penix. Can he stay healthy? If he can stay healthy, this team's a fun one to watch. They do have a legitimate shot of making a solid bowl. They're still looking for one of their first bowl wins since like 1990, I think it is. They all thought they were going to get it last year. And then Ole Miss said, "Not so fast, my friends," to quote an old IU head coach. Did you know that, Lee Corso?
Yeah.
He was actually one of the most winningest IU coaches in history.
Yeah, I know more than I probably should about Lee Corso just from like the NCAA football video games. Like he would always like interject with like little random facts, like when I coached at IU or when I coached, because he talked a lot about. Because I think he mentions that a lot, like being at IU
and LSU.
And LSU.
He left IU for LSU, I believe,
or Florida State.
But this is an exciting team to watch. This is a team, though, that is kind of strange because they lost a lot of some really good players to the transfer portal, and a lot of them went to Purdue. And now, like, one of their defensive linemen that was going to be pretty good this year is going to be a starter at Purdue. So that it's kind of concerning there when they're like they preach family and everybody loves their coach. It's been fun and interesting also at the same time watching the rise of Tom Allen at IU. I mean, this guy was basically a high school coach not that long ago. He was coaching at Ben Davis. So it's been interesting. I'm very intrigued to see how they do without a stellar run game, because that's what's been their bread and butter for so long, is having that run game. The other thing I'm looking at is the backup quarterback situation as well, because we all know Michael Penix just does not tend to stay healthy. See how that goes as well. Obviously, having Ty Freifogel is going to be big. That their wide receivers are probably, I want to say, the third best wide receiver unit in the Big Ten. So that's definitely going to be good for them. I can't wait for the Bucket game, because that game could be a very high scoring affair. Just both of those coaches are, well, at least Brom. I mean, if IU is going to be pass first this year and Brom with his air raid offense, that could be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. Looking at the schedule, speaking of, the games on the schedule this year for IU, in September they're going to go to number 18 Iowa. In September they're going to have Idaho, number 8 Cincinnati, and at Western Kentucky.
Into October. Slip in there.
What?
How'd that slip in there? You actually have to go to Western Kentucky. Nobody ever has to make the return trip.
Except Ball State, the year they went undefeated, had to play at Western Kentucky.
Well, I'm talking about like when a Big Ten goes up against, a smaller conference.
Hey, you know what? I like that.
Purdue's playing at UConn this year.
Well, see, and I love that though, because like you see it sometimes, and it's a cool thing to see. Like IU had to play at Ball State one year.
Well, that was the year Dante Love got hurt.
No, that wasn't. It was the year. It was Joey Lynch was the quarterback. Yeah, it was because Terry Hepner was the head coach, and Bill Lynch was the head coach when they played IU that year that Dante Love got hurt. Joey Lynch was the quarterback. Ball State had a 23-7 lead and ended up losing 24-23.
And then IU, anytime it's supposed to come to Ball State, they go, "Oh, let's play it at Lucas Oil Stadium instead."
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, I guess you could say the other return trip that we've seen is USF.
Yeah,
came to Ball State and lost.
They did. That was
the year that Craig got kicked out of the game. That Craig got kicked out of the press box.
Did I get kicked out of the press box?
You weren't like. Luke Martin got mad that he thought you were not supposed to be there.
No, that was at the end of the year with Ohio.
Okay.
That was the blackout game.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No.
He's not supposed to be here.
I got creds. I got creds, my guy. I'm able to be here. Oh man! And then in October they're at Penn State, who's number 19 in the country. They have Michigan State at home. They host number 4 Ohio State. And they are then at Maryland. Then in November at Michigan, Rutgers, Minnesota, and at Purdue. So for a record prediction, I think they go 2-2 in September. I think it's a brutal start against Iowa. You're in Iowa City. You're playing a Hawkeyes team that's usually pretty sound defensively. We talked about like, hey, can they establish the run game? What's Penix going to look like? That kind of thing. I mean, last year, the Hawkeyes were 5th in the Big Ten against the pass, so I think that's going to be a really tough start, and then I do think they also lose to Cincinnati, so they're going to be 2-2. In October, you're going to play a Penn State team who is going to have a chip on their shoulder. They're going to be ticked
they should
off.
Not have lost that game.
Right, because even
that was not a 2-point conversion or a touchdown, whatever it was.
Yeah.
That ball touched out of bounds before it hit the pylon.
Right, because even like with as bad as we saw that Penn State team be last year, they still should have beat IU.
I think if they had beat that game, had turned out in Penn State's favor, I don't think Penn State would have been as bad as they were.
They wouldn't have completely come apart at the seams. Yeah.
Same as when Purdue lost to Minnesota on that phantom offensive pass interference call. Yeah. Purdue went in a tailspin after that.
Right. And then so it's going to be a revenge game for the Nittany Lions, so they get the win there. And then they lose. Then IU loses to Ohio State as well. But then they're going to finish off strong. They're going to go 3-1 in November. I think at Michigan is going to be another revenge game for the Wolverines. I don't know how good the Wolverines are going to be. All I know is that last year they got hit in the mouth when they came, to Memorial Stadium. So I think Michigan's going to have a chip on their shoulder as well, just because they're big brother and they look at IU as little brother, and they're going to come out and get their revenge. But
if they lose to IU at the Big House, Jim Harbaugh will be fired.
On the spot, maybe.
On the spot.
And then, I think they went out to finish the season. They beat Rutgers, Minnesota, and Purdue. So I have IU going 7-5, which, I mean, the thing that's rough is that, like they're going to be a 7-5 team, but they're going, and so, normally that would be and I think because of their brutal schedule, that's why they're going to be 7-5. They're not 7-5 because they're a 500 team or a mediocre team. They're 7-5 because they just happen to have a brutal schedule the year after having one of their best seasons in program history. So it's going to feel kind of like a letdown if you're an IU fan. But I think if you really are get into the nitty gritty and say oh well, yeah, we're 7-5, but we also We also had to play, at Penn State, at Michigan, at Michigan. We had Ohio State, which they have them every year, but we had to go to Iowa to start the season. We played, a Cincinnati team that's, one of the best since Brian Kelly was there. It's just. It stinks because IU should be happy about how their season turns out if it turns out the way that I predict that it will, but they won't be because they're going to be too wrapped up in, hey, we were 6-1 last year, whatever their schedule was, and we feel like we should be contending for the Big Ten, which they never really were.
At the same time, if they all of a sudden start losing games, guess what? The reversible jackets flip back around and go Irish.
True.
So that's just the way that fan base goes. I mean, literally, that's just how it does. That 2-2 start in September, I can see that happening as well. I mean, I could honestly see them going with a healthy team week 1 going into Iowa and beating Iowa. Iowa, in my opinion, is always one of the more overrated teams in the Big Ten every year. So that wouldn't be too surprising to see IU actually go 3-1 in September. I do see 2-2 in October. I don't see how they beat Penn State in Happy Valley. I don't see them beating Ohio State in Bloomington. Michigan State and Maryland are going to be train wrecks, so go ahead, give that one there. At Michigan, I see them potentially losing at Michigan. I don't know. That's I guess that one's a big toss-up for me as well, just because I don't know what Michigan's going to look like. I honestly do not. Rutgers, that is one to circle as a potential. Rutgers and Minnesota are two. I mean, really, November could end up being a slippery slope because Michigan, Rutgers, Minnesota, and Purdue are 4 teams that you just don't know too much about how they are going to look. Rutgers looked like they were on their way up, with Greg Schiano back at the helm. And Minnesota, is the boat sinking, or are they still rowing it up there in Minneapolis? They do have a lot returning, which they were a pretty young team last year. They were hit hard with COVID last year as well. I mean, at one point they were down to I think it was 34 players, and they were playing 4th stringers, and it was pretty bad at one point for them. So that's going to be interesting. And then Purdue, we'll get into Purdue here in a second. But I do like the 7-5 record for them. It just could be done in numerous different ways. This is a bowl team. I will say that this is definitely a bowl team. 6-6, 7-5. I can see happening. Maybe 8-4 if they can pull an upset somewhere in September. That's a big push, or it's like I said, it could. This is a toss-up with this schedule because on the front end it is brutal, but on the back end there's so many question marks that a team could be underperforming, or they could be overperforming, or they could be injury riddled. You just don't know. So I'm going to stick with 7-5 as well for them because I feel like that's a good comfortable mark, but I still feel like this is a bowl team. This is a team that's not going to miss out on a bowl game.